In the quiet village of Niambani, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, there stood a modest home where the lives of two young sisters were forever changed by loss and hardship. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, had grown cold and shadowed ever since their father's passing. It was here that Amara and her stepsister Zala lived, two girls bound by blood and circumstance, yet worlds apart in spirit and heart. Amara, the younger of the two, was a gentle soul with eyes as deep and clear as the morning sky. Her hair fell in soft waves around her face, framing a complexion touched by the sun and the hardships of life, yet untouched by bitterness. She moved quietly through the rooms of the house, her steps light and careful, like a whispered prayer against the creaking floorboards. Though orphaned and vulnerable, there was a softness in her smile that seemed to hold the promise of kindness and resilience. Zala, on the other hand, was a stark contrast. Taller and sharper-featured, she carried herself with a rigid pride born of hardship and envy. Her eyes, dark and piercing, held a simmering anger that rarely found release except in cold glances and harsh words. Where Amara was gentle, Zala was fierce. Where Amara sought peace, Zala demanded control. The death of their father had left her with a bitter wound, one she masked with sternness and a hunger for power within the household. The house itself reflected the rift between the sisters. The hearth, once a gathering place for warmth and stories, now flickered dimly, its flames struggling to hold back the cold that crept in. The worn wooden furniture bore the marks of neglect, dust gathering in corners where no one paused to sweep. The air was thick with unspoken tensions, a silence broken only by the occasional sharp command or whispered complaint. Zala had quickly assumed control after their father's death, treating Amara less like a sister and more like a servant bound to endless chores and harsh rebukes. The young girl spent her days scrubbing floors until her hands were raw, fetching water from the well even as her legs trembled with fatigue, and preparing meals in the cramped, smoky kitchen. Every task was a reminder of her diminished place in the home she once called family. Despite this, Amara carried herself with a quiet dignity. She never complained, never raised her voice, but her eyes often betrayed a sorrow deeper than words could express. She longed for a kind word, a gentle touch, a moment of respite from the coldness that surrounded her. Yet even in the darkest moments, a flicker of hope burned quietly within her heart, a hope that one day the world might see her not as a servant, but as a person worthy of love and respect. The villagers who passed by the house often whispered about the cruel fate of the two girls. They remembered the father, a man known for his fairness and kindness, and mourned the way his absence had broken the family. Some pitied Amara, offering her small gifts or a warm smile when they saw her laboring in the fields or tending to the animals. Others dared not interfere, wary of Zala's sharp temper and the rumors that she was quick to punish those who crossed her. Inside the home, the tension between the sisters grew heavier with each passing day. Zala's voice was a constant presence, sharp and commanding, demanding obedience and submission. "Amara," she would say, "make sure the floors shine before the sun sets. And do not forget the firewood, it must be stacked neatly by evening." Her words left little room for reply, and any hesitation was met with a scowl or worse. Amara obeyed without question, her movements slow and deliberate as she carried out the tasks assigned to her. Yet, beneath the surface, her spirit endured, a fragile flame refusing to be extinguished. She found solace in the small things, the song of a bird outside the window, the softness of a worn quilt, the memory of her father's gentle laughter. These were her anchors, reminders that kindness still existed in the world, even if it was hidden beneath layers of sorrow and cruelty. As the days turned into weeks, the household settled into a grim routine. Mornings began with the cold light of dawn, and nights ended with the flicker of a lone candle burning in the dark. The sisters shared the same roof but lived in separate worlds, one ruled by bitterness and control, the other by quiet endurance and hope. Yet the story of Amara and Zala was far from over. Beneath the surface of their strained relationship, currents of fate and justice were beginning to stir, weaving a tale that would challenge the cruelty of the stepsister and reveal the true strength of the orphan girl. In the quiet moments, when the house was still and the world outside faded away, Amara would close her eyes and dream of a day when the warmth would return, not just to the hearth but to the hearts of those who called this place home. Until then she endured, carrying the weight of loss and loneliness with the grace of a soul too gentle to break. And so, in the heart of that cold, shadowed house, the stage was set for a story of hardship and hope, cruelty and courage. A story that would echo far beyond the walls of the humble home and into the very soul of the kingdom. In the humble village of Niambani, where life often demanded more than it gave, Amara was a quiet beacon of kindness and gentle strength. Despite the heavy burdens placed upon her by her stepsister Zala, whose cruelty shadowed her every day, Amara's spirit remained unbroken, shining softly like a single candle in the dark. From the moment the first light spilled over the hills each morning, Amara moved through her chores with a grace that belied the hardships she faced. She tended to the garden with care, coaxing stubborn shoots to grow and singing low melodies that the birds seemed to answer in kind. Her hands, though calloused from work, moved gently as she watered the fragile herbs and picked ripe vegetables for the day's meals. The animals of the household, sensing her kindness, responded with quiet affection. The old dog Rufaro, who had long since lost the spring in his step, wagged his tail softly when Amara approached, resting his weary head against her legs as if drawing strength from her presence. The chickens clucked softly in the yard, unfazed by her touch, and the goats nuzzled her hand when she offered them fresh hay. Even the caged birds seemed to sing brighter when she passed, their songs weaving through the air like a thread of hope. Amara took solace in these small companions, their trust a balm to the wounds inflicted by human cruelty. Neighbors in Niambani, though wary of the household's strained atmosphere, recognized Amara's gentle nature. Old Mrs. Kamara, who lived just beyond the village square, often smiled knowingly when she saw Amara carrying water or sweeping the street outside her home. "Such kindness in one so young," she would whisper to those nearby. "A heart that softens even the hardest days." One chilly morning, as the mist clung to the earth and the sun struggled to break through the gray sky, Amara found a wounded sparrow near the well. Its wing was bent awkwardly and it trembled with fear. Without hesitation, she scooped the tiny creature into her hands, her breath warm and soothing. She fashioned a small splint from twigs and strips of cloth, humming softly as she worked. Over the next days, Amara cared for the sparrow, feeding it crumbs and keeping it safe from harm. Her tender attention helped the bird heal, and one clear afternoon she watched with quiet joy as it fluttered its wings and took flight, soaring into the blue with a freedom Amara longed for herself. Even in the face of Zala's harshness, Amara extended her kindness with a resilience that surprised many. When her stepsister's sharp tongue lashed out, Amara's replies were never bitter. Instead, she met cruelty with patience and understanding, hoping to soften the heart that had grown cold. Once, when Zala returned from the market with a twisted ankle, it was Amara who tended her wound, cleaning and binding it with gentle hands despite the days of scorn she had endured. "You should rest," Amara said softly, offering a cup of water. Zala, taken aback by the unexpected care, accepted with a begrudging nod but said nothing. The villagers noticed this surprising dynamic. Many whispered about the strength it took for Amara to show such grace, while others doubted Zala's harshness would ever truly soften. But Amara's goodness was unwavering, a quiet light shining even in the darkest corners of their lives. In the evenings, when the household settled into silence and the stars twinkled above, Amara would retreat to the small garden behind the house. Here, away from prying eyes and harsh words, she nurtured a patch of wildflowers, bright blooms of red, yellow, and violet that seemed to defy the gloom. Her fingers worked the soil with care, planting seeds that she hoped would grow strong and free. This secret garden was her sanctuary, a place where hope blossomed alongside the flowers. It was here that Amara dreamed of a life beyond the walls of hardship, a life where kindness was met with kindness, and where love was the foundation of home. Her quiet acts of goodness extended beyond the boundaries of her home. On market days, she slipped small loaves of bread to children who went hungry, sharing from what little she had. She helped carry baskets for the elderly and tended to the sick with herbs learned from her mother's old books. Each gesture, though small, wove threads of compassion through the fabric of the village. Despite the harsh treatment she endured, Amara never allowed bitterness to root itself in her heart. Instead, she chose to see the good in others, holding on to the belief that kindness could change even the hardest souls. Her resilience was a quiet rebellion, a refusal to be hardened by cruelty or shaped by anger. It was this strength that made her beloved by those who knew her story and gave hope to those who feared the harshness of their own lives. And though Zala's shadow loomed large, Amara's light flickered steadily, a reminder that even in the darkest of homes, the smallest acts of kindness could sow the seeds of change. The bitterness in Zala's heart grew like a storm cloud darkening the skies above Niambani. What had started as a flicker of annoyance toward Amara's gentle ways had deepened into a seething jealousy that poisoned her every thought and action. With each passing day, the distance between the two stepsisters widened, no longer just a matter of circumstance, but a battle of wills and hearts. Zala watched with growing resentment as villagers and servants alike showed kindness to Amara, an undeserved favor in her eyes. The market vendors would often glance her way, offering a warm smile or a whispered word of encouragement. The other servants, while wary of Zala's wrath, couldn't help but admire Amara's quiet strength and unwavering grace. In the dim corners of the household, hushed conversations spoke of Amara's gentle acts, the way she shared her meager rations with a starving child, or how she tended the sick with the herbs passed down from her mother. These stories traveled quickly through the village, painting Amara as a figure of innocence and goodness, while Zala was seen as harsh and unyielding. This growing sympathy inflamed Zala's envy, twisting her heart with each passing day. She felt overshadowed, invisible beneath the soft glow that seemed to follow her stepsister wherever she went. The villagers' admiration felt like a rebuke, a reminder of what she lacked, a kindness she could never fake. Zala's pride would not allow her to accept such a fate. She vowed to reclaim her standing, to crush the affection directed at Amara, and to make clear once and for all who truly ruled the household. Her thoughts turned darker, plotting ways to rid herself of the constant reminder of her own perceived weakness. Late at night, when the house was cloaked in silence and the flicker of candlelight barely reached the corners, Zala sat alone by the window, her fingers clenched into tight fists. Her mind raced with schemes, each more sinister than the last. She imagined sending Amara away, perhaps to a distant relative or to serve in a harsh household beyond the village. But even that seemed too lenient, too forgiving. The bitterness inside her demanded a final, irreversible act. One evening, as the servants prepared the evening meal, Zala lingered in the kitchen, her eyes fixed on Amara as she moved with quiet efficiency. The girl's calm demeanor only fueled Zala's fury, a stark reminder of the powerlessness she felt. Tonight, Zala whispered to herself, there will be an end to this. She began to gather ingredients with practiced hands, selecting those that had passed their prime, rotting vegetables, stale bread, and spoiled meat hidden away from the eyes of the other servants. Her mind worked quickly, concocting a meal that would poison Amara quietly, ending her life without scandal or suspicion. The plan was cruel and cold, but to Zala, it was justice, a necessary step to reclaim control over her home and the respect she believed was rightfully hers. She would serve the meal herself, watching with satisfaction as Amara took the poisoned food, oblivious to the fate hidden within. As the evening approached, Zala's heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and dread. She rehearsed her words and actions, ensuring her face betrayed nothing of her deadly intent. When the moment came, she presented the meal to Amara with a smile that was both warm and chilling. Amara accepted the food with the same gentle grace that had long defined her. She ate quietly, unaware of the danger concealed in each bite. Zala's eyes followed every movement, a cruel satisfaction settling over her as Amara grew weaker with each passing moment. The household, once filled with the light of Amara's kindness, now seemed heavy with the weight of impending tragedy. Yet, even in the depths of Zala's dark plans, the forces of fate were already stirring, ready to challenge the cruelty and protect the innocent. As the night deepened, Zala's growing jealousy had set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives forever. A story of betrayal, resilience, and the ultimate reckoning. The kitchen of the humble Niambani household was a place usually filled with the comforting aromas of simmering stews and freshly baked bread, but on this day, a sinister air hung heavily in the room. The flickering light from the hearth cast long shadows across the walls as Zala moved with a dark purpose, her every action calculated, her mind consumed by the cruel plan she was about to enact. Today the house would taste the bitterness of her jealousy, hidden beneath a meal that promised death. The morning had passed slowly, the sun casting pale light through the small window above the hearth, as Zala methodically gathered ingredients. Only these were not the wholesome items one would expect in a meal prepared for family. Instead, her hands selected the oldest, the most spoiled elements she could find hidden at the back of the pantry and in the cold storage. Wilted greens, moldy bread, sour milk curdled beyond hope, and meat that bore the unmistakable scent of decay. Her eyes gleamed with a cruel satisfaction as she examined each item, knowing the poison was subtle yet deadly. To the untrained eye, the food would appear merely unappetizing, perhaps a meal that was poorly prepared or neglected. But for Amara, it would be a silent killer, a betrayal wrapped in familiarity. Zala moved to the worn wooden table, setting down her grim harvest. Her fingers traced the edges of the rotting bread and she smiled, imagining the moment Amara would take her first bite, unsuspecting and trusting. The thought sent a cold thrill through her veins. With practiced hands, Zala began the preparation, chopping and mixing the spoiled ingredients with deliberate care. She seasoned the dish not with herbs and spices, but with the bitterness of hatred and the sour tang of envy. Every stir of the pot was a step closer to her goal, a final act that would secure her dominance in the household. As she worked, her mind wandered to the consequences, or rather, the lack of them. Who would suspect foul play in a home already marked by sorrow and hardship? Amara was weak, often frail. A sudden illness would hardly raise alarms. And if it did, Zala was confident in her ability to spin a tale of misfortune and natural causes. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft noise behind her. The old cat, a creature of the house, slinked in cautiously, its green eyes watching her. Zala's gaze hardened. "Stay away," she hissed, waving a dismissive hand. The cat retreated, sensing the darkness that had settled in the room. Zala turned back to her grim task, placing the finished meal into a simple clay dish. The colors were dull and unpleasant, the brownish mush with flecks of black and gray, a meal that repelled the senses but promised a slow, painful end. She cleaned her hands on her apron, her lips curling into a satisfied smile. "Tonight," she whispered, "you will finally be gone." The afternoon stretched on, the sun dipping lower in the sky as the household prepared for the evening meal. Zala moved through the rooms with a practiced ease, her face composed and serene, belying the deadly secret she carried. To anyone watching, she was the dutiful stepsister, attentive and caring. But beneath the surface lay a heart hardened by envy and cruelty. Amara went about her tasks unaware of the danger lurking in her path. She hummed softly as she worked, her mind focused on completing the chores before dusk. The simplicity of her day, the quiet rhythm of routine, stood in stark contrast to the storm gathering in the kitchen. When the time came, Zala summoned Amara to the table. Her voice was smooth, almost tender, as she placed the dish before her. "Eat, Amara," she said softly. "You need your strength." Amara looked up, eyes bright but weary. She hesitated only a moment before nodding, dipping her spoon into the food and bringing it to her lips with the same gentle grace that had always defined her. The first bite was hesitant, the unpleasant taste surprising but not enough to raise alarm. Zala watched with cold eyes, the cruel satisfaction of her plan unfolding with each chew, each swallow. As Amara ate, she whispered a silent vow, a promise that the household would soon be hers alone, free from the shadow of kindness and weakness. The evening wore on, and as the meal disappeared from the plate, the poison began its slow, merciless work. Amara's body weakened, her spirit faltering as the life ebbed from her with quiet cruelty. And so, within the walls of that small, shadowed home, a terrible act was committed, one born of envy and hatred, yet destined to set in motion a tale of justice, resilience, and the unexpected power of the human heart. The evening sun cast long, fading shadows across the humble Niambani household as Amara sat quietly at the worn wooden table, a simple cloth spread beneath her hands. The day's work had left her tired, but her heart remained steady, unaware of the darkness that lingered in the meal before her. The food, prepared with such deliberate cruelty by Zala, sat steaming lightly in the clay dish, its dull colors betraying no hint of the poison within. Amara's delicate fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the spoon, her mind clouded with fatigue but her spirit still clinging to the routine that brought her small comfort amid hardship. She took her first tentative bite, the unfamiliar, sour taste stirring a flicker of confusion within her. Her brow furrowed ever so slightly as she chewed slowly, trying to make sense of the bitterness that seemed foreign to her accustomed palate. Yet, she swallowed obediently, trusting the hand that served her, even though a faint unease began to grow like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. The warmth of the food felt hollow, offering no nourishment, only an empty heaviness that settled deep within her chest. As the minutes passed, the subtle betrayal of the meal began to manifest. Amara's eyelids grew heavy, her breath shallower with each inhale. The room seemed to tilt and sway, the once familiar walls blurring softly at the edges. She placed her spoon down gently, pressing her trembling hands against the table as a cold sweat broke across her forehead. Her heart, usually steady and kind, now beat a frantic rhythm, echoing in her ears louder than the faint murmurs from the kitchen. She tried to speak, to call out for help, but the words stuck like thorns in her throat. The pain bloomed silently within her, sharp, relentless, yet hidden beneath a fragile calm. Zala watched from the shadows, a cruel smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The stepsister's plan was unfolding perfectly, the final act in a play of bitterness and betrayal. Each moment Amara weakened was a triumph, a reclaiming of power snatched from the gentle hands that had once sought only peace. Amara's gaze fluttered shut briefly, only to open again with a spark of stubborn will. She refused to give in completely, clutching at the edge of the table as if it were a lifeline. But her strength waned, her body betraying her as darkness crept closer with slow, merciless steps. The servants in the kitchen paused in their work, sensing something amiss but unsure what to do. The familiar rhythm of the household stuttered and faltered, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation of the inevitable. With a final, shuddering breath, Amara collapsed onto the table, her body limp and unresponsive. The world seemed to hold still, the soft light of dusk dimming into shadow. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the distant calls of evening birds and the crackle of the dying fire in the hearth. Zala stepped forward, her expression now carefully composed into one of feigned sorrow and concern. "She's gone," she whispered to the others, her voice steady despite the storm of triumph raging inside her. "Amara has passed in her sleep." The household reeled from the news, grief washing over those who had loved Amara quietly from afar. Yet, amid the sorrow, a whisper of doubt stirred. Could this death truly be as simple as it seemed? Some eyes lingered on Zala longer than necessary, suspicion flickering beneath their grief. But for now the cruel act had succeeded. Amara's light was extinguished, or so it seemed, swallowed by the shadows of envy and malice. The house grew colder still, the weight of loss settling deep within its walls. Yet even in apparent death the story was far from over. Beneath the earth and beneath the silence, the seeds of justice and redemption were beginning to take root, waiting for the moment they would rise to challenge the darkness. The evening had settled deep over Niambani, painting the sky with hues of indigo and violet as shadows stretched across the village's narrow paths. Within the cold walls of the household, a heavy silence hung, broken only by the occasional soft sob of those who mourned Amara's sudden passing. Zala moved through the rooms with a chilling calm, her footsteps measured and precise, as if the death of her stepsister were nothing more than an inconvenient event to be managed. She had acted swiftly after Amara's collapse, gathering a small group of trusted servants to help her with the grim task she had planned for days, to hide the body from prying eyes and unwanted questions. Under the cover of darkness, they carried Amara's lifeless form from the house to a secluded spot deep in the forest, far from the village's watchful gaze. The burial was swift and silent, marked not by tears or prayers, but by the cold efficiency of Zala's commands. The earth was turned hastily, a shallow grave dug beneath a canopy of ancient trees where moss clung to twisted roots and the moonlight barely touched the ground. No marker was left to honor the resting place of the gentle girl whose life had been stolen. Back in the village, the news of Amara's death spread like wildfire, carried on whispers and worried glances. The villagers gathered in small clusters, their faces etched with sorrow and suspicion. Many refused to believe that such a kind-hearted girl could simply pass away without cause, especially under the harsh roof she had called home. Old Mrs. Kamara, who had often shared kind words with Amara, voiced what many thought but dared not say aloud: "There is something not right here. A death so sudden, it does not sit well with my heart." Her words stirred unease among the crowd, a seed of doubt planted deep within their minds. Yet, when questioned, Zala maintained a facade of grief, her voice steady and composed as she explained that Amara had died quietly, struck down by an unknown illness. To the untrained eye, her story seemed plausible, a sudden, mysterious death in a household burdened by hardship. But beneath the surface, Zala's heart beat with a triumph as cold as the night air. She moved through the village with the grace of a woman who had claimed her victory, the weight of her secret hidden behind carefully practiced expressions of sorrow. Each whispered condolence she accepted was a dagger to her conscience, sharpened by the knowledge of the cruel truth she concealed. Among the servants, murmurs began to circulate, some questioning the timing, others fearful of what might come to light. A few brave souls who had seen the quiet kindness of Amara looked at Zala with suspicion, their eyes narrowing whenever she passed. Yet none dared to confront her openly, wary of the power she now wielded within the household. As the days turned into weeks, the house grew colder still. The absence of Amara's gentle presence was felt deeply, like a wound that refused to heal. The villagers mourned in their own ways, lighting candles at the edge of the forest and whispering prayers into the night air. But Zala remained unshaken, her gaze fixed firmly on the future she had secured. The household was hers to command now, free from the shadow of kindness and weakness she so despised. Yet, unbeknownst to her, the threads of fate were beginning to weave a new story, one that would challenge her cruelty and bring justice to the silent girl buried beneath the forest floor. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the village slept and the world held its breath, the earth over Amara's resting place seemed to stir gently, as if the spirit of the girl refused to be forgotten. The story was far from over, and the seeds of redemption had already been sown. The village of Niambani awoke to a rare and stirring event, the arrival of Queen Zara, the wise and revered ruler of the kingdom. Word had spread quickly through the winding paths and humble homes that the queen herself would be visiting, a visit that promised to bring both hope and change to the often overlooked village. The villagers bustled with nervous excitement, sweeping the streets and decorating doorways with fresh garlands of flowers, eager to make a good impression on their esteemed guest. News of the queen's arrival reached the household of Zala and Amara, setting a different kind of tension in motion. Zala's usually confident demeanor faltered for the first time in weeks as whispers of the queen's visit stirred a flicker of unease within her. The memories of the cruel plan she had enacted and the secret she kept weighed heavily on her, threatening to unravel the carefully constructed facade she maintained. Queen Zara arrived in a regal procession, her presence commanding yet serene. Draped in rich silks embroidered with symbols of peace and justice, she moved through the village with an air of quiet authority. Her eyes, sharp and observant, took in the faces of the villagers with a mix of curiosity and compassion. As she toured the village, the queen heard whispers and murmurs, stories of a young girl named Amara, whose gentle spirit had touched the hearts of many despite the harshness of her life. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of her sudden death and the shadow it cast over the community. These stories stirred something deep within the queen, a sense of injustice that refused to be ignored. When the queen's entourage reached the household of Zala and Amara, a palpable tension filled the air. Zala stood rigid, her smile tight and forced as she greeted the queen. The other servants moved quickly to prepare a meal worthy of the royal guest, yet none could shake the unease that clung to the household like a dark cloud. In a moment that sent a shiver through everyone present, Queen Zara made a startling demand. She requested that the very same meal that had been served to Amara on her last night be prepared and presented before her. The request rippled through the room, silencing murmurs and freezing movements. Zala's heart pounded fiercely against her ribs, a cold sweat breaking out across her skin. The queen's words were more than a command, they were a challenge, a test that threatened to expose the truth Zala had fought so hard to conceal. Despite the fear clawing at her, Zala maintained her composure, signaling the servants to begin the preparations. Each movement was a careful act of deception, a balancing of appearances that sought to keep the household's darkest secret buried. As the kitchen buzzed with nervous energy, the queen's steady gaze never wavered. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to pierce through the layers of facade and falsehood. The villagers watched with bated breath, sensing that the queen's visit was more than a mere courtesy, it was the beginning of a reckoning. In that moment, the fate of the household hung in the balance. The meal that was once a weapon of cruelty now became a symbol of justice in the making. And as the first scents of the food wafted through the air, everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The grand hall of the household, usually quiet and worn with age, was transformed into a place of uneasy anticipation. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows across the wooden beams, and the air was thick with tension as the servants moved swiftly to prepare the table for Queen Zara's arrival. Each movement was careful, deliberate, as if the slightest misstep might shatter the fragile balance that held the household's secrets in place. Zala stood near the entrance, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and defiance. The meal laid before the queen was the very same dish she had once served Amara, the meal laced with rot and cruelty, meant to end the innocent girl's life quietly. Now it was a weapon pointed back at her, a mirror reflecting the darkness she had tried to hide. The queen entered with a grace that commanded respect and silence. Draped in deep sapphire robes embroidered with silver threads, her presence filled the room with an almost otherworldly calm. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the surroundings with quiet authority, settling briefly on Zala with an inscrutable expression. As the meal was brought forth, the servants held their breath, each one acutely aware of the significance of the moment. The clay dish, dull and uninviting, was placed carefully before the queen. The scent of spoiled ingredients lingered faintly in the air, a subtle but unmistakable warning to those who knew how to read it. The queen's hands moved slowly, deliberately lifting the spoon to her lips. The room seemed to hold its breath, the weight of countless eyes pressing down like a heavy cloak. She tasted the meal with measured calm, her face revealing nothing as she chewed thoughtfully. But beneath the surface of her composed demeanor, a flicker of something passed, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a soft exhale barely audible to those nearest. The queen's lips pressed together, holding back a reaction that could unravel the delicate threads of the evening. The servants exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to interpret the queen's silence. Zala's face remained pale, her usual confidence eroding with each passing second. She could feel the queen's gaze lingering on her, a silent accusation wrapped in regal authority. Finally, the queen set down her spoon with quiet resolve. Her voice, when it came, was calm but carried the weight of unyielding justice. "This meal," she said softly, "bears the mark of deceit and cruelty. It is unfit for any table, let alone mine." The room trembled with the impact of her words. The villagers, servants, and even Zala herself felt the walls close in, the hidden sins laid bare beneath the queen's unflinching stare. Yet, in that moment of reckoning, the queen's calmness was a balm, a promise that truth would be met with fairness, not vengeance. Her mysterious demeanor unsettled all present, for it spoke of power beyond mere title, a wisdom that saw beyond appearances and pierced the veil of lies. The queen's choice to taste the meal, to confront the darkness directly, was a testament to her strength and compassion. As the evening continued, the household was forever changed. The rotten meal, once a symbol of cruelty, had become a catalyst for justice. And beneath the steady gaze of Queen Zara, the story of Amara and Zala was about to unfold in ways none could have foreseen. The grand hall, once filled with tense whispers and anxious glances, grew deathly silent as Queen Zara's gaze fixed unwaveringly on Zala. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon the room, as if the very air awaited the unveiling of truths long buried beneath lies and shadows. The queen's voice, calm but resolute, broke the silence with words that would forever change the course of the household's fate. "This meal," she began, her tone steady yet commanding, "is tainted, not by mere neglect but by deliberate malice." She gestured toward the clay dish, the symbol of cruelty cloaked in ordinary guise. "It carries the poison meant to silence an innocent life, to bury kindness beneath rot and death." Zala's composure faltered as the eyes of the villagers, servants, and the queen pierced through her defenses. Whispers of disbelief and horror rippled through the crowd, the weight of accusation settling like a storm. The queen's revelation was not just an indictment, it was a call for justice that demanded no delay. Then the air shifted, charged with a power beyond mortal understanding. A low hum seemed to rise from the earth itself, a vibration that thrummed through the bones of all present. The torches flickered wildly, casting dancing shadows that twisted and writhed like living things upon the walls. Zala's face drained of color as the supernatural force pressed down upon her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, roots and stones stirring as if awakened by a righteous fury. The villagers gasped, clutching each other in fear and awe, as the queen raised a hand to calm the gathering storm. "Your cruelty," the queen declared, "shall not go unpunished." Before their eyes, the shadows coalesced around Zala, binding her in a cage of ethereal vines that glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. The vines tightened slowly, not to kill but to imprison, a living reminder of the consequences born from cruelty and envy. Zala struggled, her cries echoing through the hall, but the magic was relentless, fueled by the innocence that had been betrayed and the justice that demanded balance. Her once proud form was humbled, her power stripped away by the very forces she sought to manipulate. As the binding light pulsed, a gentle warmth spread across the room, a healing force that touched the hearts of all present. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, a soft glow began to emerge, growing brighter until it revealed the figure of Amara, radiant and whole, standing as if reborn from the earth itself. Gasps of wonder filled the air as Amara's eyes met those of the queen, shining with gratitude and a quiet strength that no darkness could diminish. Her presence was a miracle, a testament to the resilience of goodness and the power of justice. The queen stepped forward, her voice now filled with gentle authority. "Amara, your kindness has not gone unnoticed. Your spirit, though challenged by cruelty, remains unbroken. You shall be honored in this village and beyond, a symbol of hope and grace." With a graceful motion, the queen lifted a small, intricately carved amulet from her necklace and placed it around Amara's neck. The amulet shimmered with a light that seemed to pulse in time with Amara's heartbeat, a sign of protection and recognition from the highest authority. The villagers wept openly, their sorrow turning to joy as they embraced the living proof that kindness and truth endure beyond even the darkest trials. The servants, once fearful, now looked to Amara with newfound respect and admiration. As for Zala, the punishment was clear and just. Bound by the queen's magic, she was sentenced to serve the village humbly, learning the meaning of compassion and humility before any hope of redemption. The queen's mercy was firm but fair, a chance for Zala to atone for her sins and mend the broken bonds she had shattered. The story of Amara's resurrection and Zala's reckoning spread far beyond Niambani, inspiring songs and tales that echoed through generations. It was a story of betrayal and forgiveness, cruelty and courage, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, justice prevails and goodness shines through. And so, beneath the watchful eyes of Queen Zara and the grateful hearts of the villagers, A new chapter began, one where love and kindness reclaimed their rightful place, and the shadows of the past were dispelled by the light of truth. The sun rose gently over Niambani, casting golden light across the village and illuminating the changes that had begun to take root after the night of reckoning. Where once shadows of sorrow and fear lingered, now there was a renewed sense of hope, a gentle stirring of life that promised healing and transformation. At the heart of this change was Amara, restored not only in body but in spirit, a living testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and justice. The household that had once been ruled by cruelty and envy was now a place of warmth and harmony. The cold walls softened by the presence of Amara's light, the heavy silence replaced by laughter and gentle voices. Servants moved with ease and respect, no longer burdened by fear but inspired by the strength of the girl who had endured so much and emerged victorious. Amara herself was transformed in every sense. Her eyes, once dulled by hardship, now shone with a quiet radiance. She walked through the village with a grace that spoke of newfound confidence, her steps light and sure. The villagers greeted her with smiles and open arms, their hearts swelling with pride and gratitude for the young woman who had become a symbol of hope for them all. Queen Zara's presence remained a guiding force in the village. She had not only brought justice but also a profound message that echoed in the hearts of everyone, that true power lies not in status or wealth, but in kindness, compassion, and the courage to stand for what is right. Her final words to the villagers were a blessing and a call to action. "Let this village be a beacon," the queen proclaimed, "where justice is swift, kindness is abundant, and the fate of each soul is shaped not by cruelty but by the goodness within." May Amara's story remind us all that even in the darkest times, the light of compassion can guide us to a brighter future. The household embraced this new beginning wholeheartedly. Zala, now humbled and bound by the queen's judgment, began the long journey of redemption. Under the watchful eyes of the villagers and with Amara's quiet forgiveness, she learned the value of empathy and the pain caused by her past actions. Though her path to restoration was difficult, it was paved with the possibility of change. As the seasons turned, Niambani blossomed into a community strengthened by the trials it had faced. The fields yielded richer harvests, the children's laughter echoed through the streets, and the bonds between neighbors grew unbreakable. The story of Amara's restoration became a cherished tale, told and retold as a reminder that justice and kindness are intertwined threads in the fabric of life. Amara herself took on a new role as a leader and healer, her gentle spirit guiding those in need and inspiring others to acts of generosity and courage. The village's transformation was a living testament to the queen's wisdom and the enduring power of goodness. In the end, the story was not just about punishment and betrayal but about the strength of the human heart to forgive, to heal, and to rebuild. It was a story that transcended time, a legacy of hope that would shine in the hearts of generations yet to come. And so, beneath the vast African sky, Niambani thrived, a place where justice reigned, kindness blossomed, and fate was shaped by the choices of those brave enough to embrace love over hatred, light over darkness. The morning sun rose gently over the village of Niambani, casting golden light upon a land reborn. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the songs of birds that seemed to celebrate the new beginning unfolding beneath the vast, open skies. In the heart of the village, the household that once bore the heavy shadows of cruelty and sorrow was transformed, its walls now alive with warmth and hope. Amara stood at the center of this transformation, a living testament to resilience and the power of kindness. The radiant glow that surrounded her was not merely from the queen's amulet, but from the strength and grace that had carried her through trials no one should endure. She moved through the household with gentle confidence, her smile touching the hearts of those who had once feared the weight of darkness. The villagers gathered around, their faces alight with joy and reverence. Songs were sung, dances performed, and stories shared, celebrations that echoed far beyond the boundaries of Niambani, carrying the message of hope to distant lands. Amara's name became a symbol, whispered with respect and love, a reminder that goodness could flourish even in the harshest soil. Within the household, change was profound and lasting. Where once coldness and suspicion reigned, warmth and cooperation blossomed. Servants worked side by side, laughter filling the rooms as barriers of fear and envy crumbled like fragile walls. Zala, bound by the queen's magic and humbled by her punishment, began her journey toward redemption. Her steps were tentative but sincere as she learned the meaning of compassion, her once bitter heart softening with each act of kindness she witnessed and received. Queen Zara's presence remained a guiding light throughout the village's renewal. She walked among the people with the serene grace of one who understood the delicate balance of justice and mercy. In the great hall, Where once judgment had been pronounced, the queen now spoke words that would echo in the hearts of all who heard them. "Kindness is the thread that binds us," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of wisdom earned through years of rule and reflection. "Justice is the path we walk to protect the innocent and hold the cruel to account. Fate is not a chain that binds us, but a tapestry we weave with every choice, every act of love or cruelty." Her message resonated deeply, inspiring the villagers to embrace a future shaped by fairness and empathy. The queen encouraged the people to look beyond appearances and judgments, to seek the truth hidden beneath the surface, and to stand united in the face of adversity. As days turned into weeks, the village flourished. Fields once barren with neglect bloomed with golden crops, and the laughter of children filled the air as they played freely in the sun-dappled clearings. The household became a beacon of hope and renewal, where stories of past darkness were met not with fear but with the courage to forgive and rebuild. Amara, now a respected member of the community and the queen's trusted attendant, carried her own story with quiet dignity. Her journey from suffering to strength inspired all who knew her, a living proof that even in the darkest night, the dawn will come. Zala's redemption was slow but sure. Through service and sincere remorse, she began to mend the bonds she had broken. The queen's magic that once bound her was now a gentle reminder, a call to humility and growth. Though the scars of her cruelty remained, they served as lessons etched deep into her soul, guiding her toward a path of compassion. The queen's final visit to Niambani was marked by a ceremony unlike any before. Under the ancient trees that had witnessed so much sorrow and now so much hope, she blessed the village and its people. Her words were a benediction and a charge. "May kindness be your shield and justice your sword. May you remember that fate is shaped by the hearts of those who dare to choose love over hate, mercy over vengeance." Let this village stand as a testament to the power of redemption and the enduring strength of the human spirit. As the queen's procession faded into the horizon, the villagers gathered once more, their hearts full of gratitude and resolve. The story of Amara and Zala had become more than a tale of betrayal and punishment. It was a beacon guiding future generations toward a world where kindness and justice reign. And so, beneath the warm sun and endless sky, the village of Niambani embraced its new beginning, a place where love had conquered darkness, and the threads of fate were woven into a tapestry of hope.